magic wonder. Can you see this spell I'm under? Make you wonder with that rhythm. Feel it moving through your system. Step on, steppers, step up to it. All you got to do is do it. Do it, yeah, yeah. We come to do it, yeah, yeah. We come to do it, yeah, yeah. We come to do it, yeah, yeah. I got the wandering name. I got the wandering name. I got the wandering name.
I'd just like to start with a bit of an introduction about New Zealand. Beef and Lamb New Zealand is a farmer organisation formed under the Commodities Levies Act. Total revenues for Beef and Lamb New Zealand is around 24 million New Zealand dollars. We invest farmer levies in 4 programs, which is our farm, market, people and information. And our mission is to deliver innovative tools and services to support informed decision making and continuous improvement in market access, product positioning and farming systems. The farm program, which I look after, our strategic objective is to deliver research, development and technology transfer for whole farm systems. The farm budget, out of the total $24 million, our farm budget is just a little over $10 million. So obviously it's an important element for the levy organisation. So what I'd like to talk to you about is a little bit about the New Zealand red meat sector. Has always been the principal driver of New Zealand's economy and identity, and it generates nearly $8 billion annually in export earnings. And our red meat sector very much forms the basis of the visual and social landscape of New Zealand. I thought it was very appropriate for us to have a look at the World Cup. Excellent. So even with significant scientific and technological advances in farming and processing, the history of the sector has been greatly impacted on the farm profitability. And this has resulted in lots of land use changes and none more so than in recent years, where sheep and beef land has been transferred to other uses such as dairy farming, forestry, urban sprawl, and the conservation estate. The transition from a production focus to an efficiency influenced model has been encouraged by the competition of land use capability and the increasing costs of traditional farming. So my presentation today is I'd like to talk a little bit about New Zealand production. And I'm going to use some information that has been developed through our economic service, so the Beef and Lamb New Zealand Economic Service, where we survey farms across New Zealand to understand the profitability of those farms and what are the key drivers. Just to give you an indication, on each individual farm we survey, we collect 897 pieces of information that actually makes up the data, so it's a very comprehensive survey on each farm. I'm then going to talk a little bit about and give some example of performance recording and how that's translated into industry improvement, and then just a quick summary at the end. In terms of New Zealand production, I think the biggest influencer that we've seen in recent years is actually what's happened with the change from our finishing and breeding farms that have been forced back up into the hill country. So in the finishing and breeding farms, we've seen a 48% decline in the number of farms, but in terms of the land area, we've seen a 30% decline. So what we're seeing is an increasing level of aggregation. At farms, we're getting less farms in the finishing area, more farms in the hill country area, but the size of the farms are actually getting bigger. In terms of what's happened in terms of the acreage, again, it's that similar effect where the farms have got bigger. Correspondingly, when we have a look at what's happened in the dairy industry, where we've seen a 19% reduction in the number of farms, but a 66% increase in the actual area. So again, there's been a massive increase in the number of dairying or amount in dairying hectares acreage. In terms of some of our key performance indicators, I think the biggest driver here, and we've actually seen what's happened with lambing percentage from 1990-91 through to 2011-12. This is our estimation. And I've put a couple of figures there on either side. So in 9-10, our lambing percentage was 123.2, and it dropped to 111.7% in 10-11. And that was as a result of some severe spring storms where we had significant lamb losses and also ewe losses. The figure, it's an estimated figure for this year because we're still obviously collecting the data from last spring and analysing it, and that'll be produced in July. And it's likely to be up higher than that because there was a level of conservatism built into that figure when we did the estimation based on the effect of the previous year's severe weather extremes as to what happened with the ewe flock. In terms of kilograms of lamb per ewe, we've shifted from 9.8 up to 16.4, average lamb weight from 13.9 to 18.2. And so we've seen quite a strong level of performance in our sheep flock. In terms of our calving percentage, we've seen a modest improvement from 81.5 to 83.8, and average steer weight from 297 kilos through to 306. In terms of the information and the trend over time, obviously we're seeing there the impact of seasonal conditions and the impact that actually happens as a result of that. We use 1990-91 as our base year, so as we go through the various slides, and I'll make the comparison back to 1990-91, we use 1991 as the base year for our comparisons. And this is because up into the late 1980s, New Zealand had a system where there was supplementary payments and there was government support for farming. And the late reforms of the 1980s, all of these were removed. And 1990-91 was the first year that we were deemed to be totally on the open market. And so since that time, our farmers have been farming in conditions with no support and have been open to the vagrancies of our currency and things like that. In terms of export lamb weight, and again, we've seen that increase and obviously the impacts of seasonal conditions. So this is the figures that have been derived from our economic farm survey. So these are from actual figures on the farm. In terms of activities, so the areas that we've been looking to improve on is obviously lambing percentage, wool production per sheep, carcass weights and growth rates, and it's for both our sheep and cattle. Loss rates, increasing lamb and calf survival, fertiliser per hectare or per stock unit, depending on the farm system. So in our more intensive farm systems, we're looking at, on a stock unit basis, on what we call our more extensive systems, which is the hill country systems. We're looking at it on a per hectare. price levels, meat, wool, farm expenditure per hectare, and the gross margins, which are a sum of above. There's also other factors which come into play here as well, which is the rate of return and the debt-equity ratio. I think one of the things that we're fortunate enough in our sheep and beef farms in New Zealand is that most farms enjoy a relatively high level of equity. It averages at around 67% equity in their farm. So when we looked at all of those factors, we saw the number of them were actually within farm control. So over the years, there's actually been a lot of angst and effort put into what's happening to product prices. But in reality, the farms individual farms have very little control about what they can do about the price of their products. And so we started concentrating on what are the things that we can actually do to control performance on farm. And what we've identified is that there are a number of areas here that were all directly related to genetic improvement and the influence of performance recording. And then there were some others which, whilst they were within farm control, weren't necessarily related directly to our genetic performance. Some of the things that we looked at, and pregnancy scanning, which was introduced in the early 1990s. The activity of scanning doesn't actually increase the lambing percentage, but what we did is it created information from scanning which enabled management decisions that could increase a lambing percentage. And when we actually did further analysis on the farm profitability and we started trying to understand what was going on with those farmers who are at the top end, so the guys who are in the top 20% in terms of farm profitability, 99.9% of them were actually pregnancy scanning. So they're gaining a whole lot more information which they could then apply to their farming enterprise. The other end of the scale, whilst it ended up in terms of statistically an average of 75%, the bottom 20%, the range was from 0 to 100%. So there was one or two of those guys in the bottom 20% who were actually pregnancy scanning, but the vast majority of them weren't actually scanning. And it's around this information, and it's one of the things that I've learned in the last 2 days. There's 2 or 3 things that have become quite topical, and one of them is around collaboration in terms of how international collaboration can grow the opportunities. But the other is the source of information and what we can do with that information. So the key to our top key performing farmers, so then when we actually went through and did a further analysis, and we did quite a deep dive into the information that we collected from the financial performance of these farms, is that we identified that all of those top performing farmers had a higher lambing percentage, they had a higher calving percentage, they had high slaughter weights, they had high wool production per sheep, and they also had high survival. And all of those were an important economic efficiency, and all of them were key genetic selection drivers. And so what I'd like to talk about, so whilst New Zealand has a whole range of strategies that have been developed, we launched our red meat sector strategy in May of 2011. The area that I'd like to just go into a little bit more detail today is the influence of sheep genetic, our sheep database and genetic evaluation system. And so when we make the comparison, we look back between 1994 to 1998, and this is actually the rate of genetic gain. It's not a genetic trends graph. And in 1998-99, when we saw the introduction of SIL, Sheep Improvement Limited, we saw a definite increase in the rate. And then in early 2000s, 2003, with the introduction of SIL-ACE, which is the Advanced Central Evaluation, and the Central Progeny Test, we again saw that rate kick up. And just for those of you at the back, the red dotted line is our meat breeds and the black dotted line is our maternal breeds. And so when we then had a look at what was going on with carcass weight, and again a very similar thing was going on there in terms of the rate of gain, introduction of sill, and then again from ACE and the central progeny test. Same number of lambs born. And so what we're able to do then, looking at our indexes, we then did some further analysis and looked at 1990 to 94 pre-sill, where the meat breed index on a cents or dollars per year was at 37, and for our maternal breeds was at 25. And just to give, again, looking at it in another time period, between 95 and 98, 34 and 29, so there was very little change in that period. And then the introduction of SIL from 1999 to 2003, we saw it jump to 61 cents and 59 cents respectively, and 2004 to 2006 with the introduction of CPT and SIL ACE, we saw that jump again to 83 and 92. The SIL traits, so when we actually have a look at the beginning of SIL, when we first started, and in terms of we were looking at early growth and adult size, number of lambs born, fleece weight, so we were measuring a few traits. And then since 2010 we've actually added a whole host of new traits, and there's beerness and ewe longevity which are being developed at the moment, and we've also got the opportunity to start looking at DNA and genomic information to actually match that together, and we're just developing that. And ewe efficiency is another area that's been worked on. Some of the new technologies and DNA parentage with Pfizer, we're looking at SNP molecular BVs and obviously blended BVs with genomics, carcass merit assessment, lean meat yield and meat eating qualities. But one of the things I guess we've been looking at is defining breeding merit, or as we'd like to put it, perhaps redefining breeding merit. And the question we're asking is more always better? And trait windows, number of lambs, fatness, what about the balance across traits? And so one of the areas that we're starting to focus more on now is how can we actually do this better? So how can we actually take a more balanced view across a number of traits? So one of the things that we have is we have new online tools that have been developed to actually help us understand this, and we've got two sheep here, sheep A and sheep B. So for purposes of this demonstration, both of them have similar or the same index. But when we actually drop down and start having a look at what's going on at a sub-index level, then we have the ability to actually have a better understanding of what's actually going on with those animals. And do we start thinking about going for the all-star or perhaps the one-trick pony? So the challenges for us ahead is how do we actually extract more information, how do we extract data that can be used by farmers and breeders for understanding more about the information that we have. And so SIL ACE, until recently, the top 200 sizes leader lists for traits and selection indexes, which were posted on the internet. But there is a wealth of data that actually sat behind the information that we published in those lists. And so just recently we've developed two new e-search tools on the internet, where we've got Flock Finder, which is effectively a tool that's been developed for commercial breeder. So this is just the commercial farmer who can identify flocks with genetic information that ram buyers want. So this is targeted towards the commercial farmer. Then we have the ram finder, which has actually been developed for individual animals with specified combinations, which is more targeted towards the ram breeder who'll be looking for greater information. So the flock finder, which is about identifying flocks with genetic merit. And so what we're able to do here, so you can go online, and this is just open to anyone can go and have a look at this on our SIL website, and you're presented with an opportunity to actually select for what you're looking for in a flock. What is the information that you're going to be selecting on, and you can make your choices by just clicking on the dots, and you can actually increase or reduce the emphasis that you actually want to have on a particular area. And what that'll do is it'll bring up a list of flocks who actually have the information that you've identified that you're looking for, and it also include the number of rams that have actually gone into the system. Sitting alongside it are the traits that have actually been measured by that flock, so that you can identify what the makeup of the data that actually sits there, and then you can select on the breeder that you need or that you want to go and find out more from, and it drops down and it gives you the address and where the location is and how to contact them and whether to email them or ring them. So we're not involved in recommending sales or anything like that. This is about putting the information in front of the commercial farmer to help them make better decisions or more informed decisions. In terms of the tool that's actually available for individual animals, this allows the ram breeder to be a little bit more specific about what it is that they're actually looking for. And so it's quite a different set of selection opportunities that get put in front of you if you're looking for a specific ram. And so it gives you the opportunity to put greater or less emphasis on trying to attain that increased balance. And so you're able to go through and identify all the various areas and what the weightings are that you require. Again, it brings you up a list with the of the flock numbers and then the individual animals, and it goes through and gives you the detailed information on the sub-indexes. And then you can go through and make further selection where you can either print the page off or go back and have a look at the previous animal and make comparisons online for you to actually work out the balance that you're looking for. The opportunity that we see in the industry, and Beef and Lamb has been doing quite a bit of this work around understanding the variation in farm performance. We did the deep dive that I was talking about before, as we did an analysis which compared the farm profitability between 1991 and 2009. And in 1991, the 17% of the farmers were making losses, and in 2009, there were 23% of the farms were making losses. One of the key drivers here, when we actually understand this, is that in 1991, there were 19,000 farms, or 38% of the farms were operating on the hill country. In 0809, 48% were actually in the hill country. So they were farming in more harder conditions and looking at this profitability. But the real thing that we understand, whilst it's quite a worrying trend to see the decline in profitability, what we identified out here was that there was a lot more farmers who were making a lot of money. And when we started making some of these comparisons, so for instance, around this level, there was around about $140,000 per farm difference, just looking between the guys in the 50th and comparing them with the up into the 70th. So there was quite a bit of opportunity that was still sitting on the table. And so our work has led us to look at how we're actually going to increase the profitability and the future strategy for our industry. And it was to actually understand that if we could target these guys who are in the 50th percentile and increase their farm profitability up into the 80th percentile, we're talking about a $181 million impact on the New Zealand industry. And so a lot of our strategies at the moment are actually targeting how we can lift the guys that are in the middle up into the top. There's lots of reasons why these guys are sitting down in the bottom end, not necessarily to do with capability. A lot of it is could be around lifestyle choice and their particular farming situation. And the task of actually concentrating on the bottom end is actually just too big a task. And so our first opportunity, I guess, is to look at how we can actually increase this middle group up into the top end. So next of our opportunities is to start aligning industry investment. And it's interesting when we talk about collaboration because collaboration starts at home first. And so our challenge is not only how we collaborate across the borders, but even within our own country, we actually have to start collaborating more. And so first thing is around how can we actually build on-farm data collection, data storage and management, some of the analysis, targeted research and development. One of the projects that I'm working on at the moment is mapping right across our industry in partnership with research organisations so that we can actually understand where the investment is already going and making sure that there is reduced overlap. The other areas around market influence and demand, and the red meat sector strategy has enabled us to work a lot more closely with processors and people operating in the marketplace. But the big driver for us is around uptake and adoption, and that's part of the reason that I was put into my role in putting the research and development and uptake and adoption together, because we needed to actually create a seamless transition from understanding what the research was and then how we apply it on farm. And so our future opportunity is how we can actually create a sheep genetics hub where we can actually look at all the various players, and this model, no matter which way you put it around, I think I've seen it recreated in so many different ways in the last 2 days. It gives me great confidence that I think either we're all right or we're all wrong, but I think there's a lot more opportunity out there. So in terms of summary, just wrapping up very quickly, SIL has made a significant contribution to the success of the New Zealand sheep industry. It's not only been a growth and it's not only grown in depth, but it also has grown in breadth. We've got better use of genomic information and there's clearly added value to the industry. Looking forward, there is a scope to extract even greater value. Industry breeding objectives will change. We're seeing increasing influence of sustainability and environment issues on our farming systems, and even our breeding programs have to take into account the sorts of challenges that our farmers are facing every day. And we need a more complete alignment of genetic and genomic and adoption. So it's how we can actually create a seamless line between our traditional genetic evaluations, our new genomic investments, and how that's adopted on farm. Thank you very much.